All right, let's call the meeting to order of the Urban Design Commission. Please silence your mobile devices and let's call roll.
George McQuistion.
Here.
Jeff Struble. Betsy Brunstetter. Lisa Chronister. Here. Brian Fitzsimmons. Matt Guillory. Here. Long Nguyen. John Robison. Here. And David Yost.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, terrific. That is item 1. Item 2 is approval of the minutes. Were there any questions or comments regarding the minutes? If not, unless there are any objections, we will consider them approved by unanimous consent. Let's move on down to item 5A, the consent docket, 809 Northwest 7th Street. Does anyone have a comment about this or desire to pull this from the consent docket? Now, I actually have some questions about that are probably more than appropriate for the consent docket, so I'm going to ask that we move it down into individual consideration, okay, so then we just move it straight down. So, okay, so 809 Northwest 7th Street for individual consideration. My questions had to do with color. I didn't see color called out in anything in the application.
Right, and I know that we have color on the second item on the agenda today, but I checked actually the application checklist this afternoon before I came over here in case that became an issue. And color is not a mandatory or a required component of the submittal, but I believe the owner is here today, and he does. The reason he didn't show color is because he's got 2 palettes that he's trying to choose from, and he has brought those for you today to take a look at.
Okay, Dennis, would you mind walking us through that, please?
Pretty safe, standard colors.
Okay.
So this is the palette that you are going with?
Yes, it is.
Were there any questions for Dennis? No questions? Any motions? Okay, that's Robeson and Struble, second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Dennis. All right, item 6B now, I guess. 614 Northwest 7th Street.
Yes, this item is on the individual consideration portion of your agenda due to a issue regarding the requirement for elevation of the first floor to 24 inches. And this project does not comply with that. And there's also a consideration for a portion of the roof structure on the roof terrace has a shade structure of about 200 square feet that includes corrugated metal panel for that portion of the roof structure. And the guidelines also require special consideration through design review for that. So we've put that in your agenda for consideration as well. Basically, we've reviewed both of those issues, and we find that essentially the design of this, the contemporary design of this structure is more in keeping with having a flush at-grade foundation as opposed to a walk-up front porch. And many houses of this design in the Cottage District have been done with an at-grade foundation, going through the same consideration process in the design review of the CA. So we're recommending approval of the project. And secondarily, with regard to the corrugated metal portion of the shade structure in the rear, it's quality material. We've had a chance to review the specs on it. It's also not very visible from anywhere on the street because it's behind the stair tower that would hide that material from view. So it's really primarily only visible from the people that are on the terrace, or perhaps some people that are south of the site that would be looking up toward it, but from pretty good distance because it's on the third story. So that completes our presentation.
Okay. Were there any questions or is anyone here are the applicants here? Okay. And then is there anyone here to comment on it in the audience? No? Okay. Were there any questions for either Michael or the applicants among the commissioners? I had a couple of comments. One, the building at floor grade, for me personally, is not an issue because, frankly, I'm not even sure that the code complies with ADA the way it's written now. And as you pointed out, Michael, there are a lot of similar homes that do not have the 24-inch step-up. My question was about the front facade of the house, and I'll just throw this out to see if anybody else had a similar concern. And the elevations on this house are really cool. The only elevation that concerns me is the elevation that's fronting the street, the north elevation. I just wasn't sure there were enough windows. We maybe weren't engaging the street enough, and I know that that's the guest room and then an upstairs closet, and I didn't know if some type of clear story or something could be put in there so that we wouldn't have so many blank walls fronting 7th. In the event, I'll just throw that out. That may just be me.
I have a question. It appears that the entry door has glass in it. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, please do.
I'm Steve C. I'm the builder of the project.
Okay.
And actually, there is windows on the left-hand side of that space that you're talking about, and then also on the right-hand side, that's glass going all the way up 3 stories at the doorway, and then above the doorway, and then the staircase leading up to that 3rd floor balcony area. So there's glass going all the way up there, and then across the top of the 3-story balcony or stairway area, there's windows going across that. So we've tried to address adding some materials on the front, some glass to that.
I think, if I'm reading this correctly, it's the elevations that are farthest forward and nearest the street that are windowless.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's a closet behind that. That entire space behind that is a closet, and the master bedroom is actually on the left-hand side of that project or that property. So it didn't leave us a whole lot of room to put any glass on that area, unless they decide they want to put something in the closet. But the way it was designed, it wasn't set up for that. That area sticks out a little bit, and there are windows on the side of that, so as you're driving down the street, there's 2 bedrooms on that lower portion of that area there, and so there's windows on both sides of that from the east side of the property.
Right, right. It looks great. My only concern about that is that we try to engage the street and activate the street for 2 reasons. One is that it makes it more, and I know that all your views are out the back, and so it's all kind of oriented that way, and that's understandable. But in order to try to encourage more of a pedestrian engagement, we like to have some windows so that people don't feel like they're walking by, just stretches of wall. And then the second reason, and maybe it's the more important reason, is just for safety. There's that notion of eyes on the street, windows on the street. If there are windows there, people tend to act accordingly, as opposed to when they don't think that anybody could be watching them. Again, I don't want to make too big of a deal about this. If I'm the only one who has an issue, then that's fine.
I think that space is only about 15 feet wide. I mean, I know on the elevation it may look like it's bigger than that, but it's not very big. It's like a 12-foot wide bedroom along with a 3-foot wide hallway that's leading back into that bedroom. So that elevation part that you're talking about on the front is only around 15, 16 feet wide.
And that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
George, I agree with you that there's not enough engagement window-wise, and thinking about, you're saying it's a closet, and I was thinking, well, I guess you could put fake windows, but at least there would be the illusion of windows on the street.
On the ground level, it's the guest bedroom.
Right.
Even a clear story, and for the plans, it's about 17.8 wide with a 2-foot gap, and then another 14 feet almost of screen wall, solid wall in front of the lap pool. So from a pedestrian point of view, it would be in the neighborhood of 30 feet-ish of blank wall at the street.
The space that's up above, actually, we do have a window out of that closet, or actually it's out of the master bath area. And I don't know if you can really see it very well in that elevation, so I'd like to kind of show you this if I could. If you just take a look at this one sheet has two footprints on it, which would be the bottom floor, which has the garage and the 2 bedrooms, and then the second floor. And so on that second floor, if you look at the top of the page, you could see where it shows that area. And that area is actually set back a ways. It's not flush with that one downstairs, so it's not like straight up and down off the ground floor. That first floor goes up, and then there's a flat roof area, and then it goes up on the second floor for the closet, and then, like I said, that bathroom area. What we're showing on this plan, which may not be shown on that elevation, is that there's actually a window that's going to be placed almost the entire length of the width of the bathroom there. About a 10-foot wide window that's going to go up there.
That's on the second level.
That's on the second level, right.
It was the first level that I was describing.
The first level is, that area there is showing that it's 12 feet some odd wide. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 17.7 wide. And then the window's right there on the very corner of the house. And that's what I was saying, you'd be able to see that coming up from the east side. We're just trying to keep a nice sleek look across the front of the house, and we really felt like we were putting so much glass in going up that staircase area, 3 stories tall of glass, that we were kind of covering that pretty well.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying that one northern elevation kind of overemphasizes this feeling of a solid wall.
It looks like on the elevation, if you just look at the elevation, it looks like it's one solid wall going up, but it actually goes up 1 story, and then it goes back.
Right.
and goes up again for the second floor.
And so you're saying with the setback of the second story, then some of the windows on the sides and some of the interesting angles on the sides, that it would read from the street a lot more varied than
I
it's
think so,
reading on
because
that.
if you look at the elevations, that one area is only 6'8" back from the elevation of the front wall of the closet area. It's only 6'8" back to where the tower is that has the glass going all the way up.
Right.
So it's not like it's back there 15 or 20 feet. It's within 6 feet of that second floor offset.
Gotcha. I think those are valid replies. I'm not going to push this one. I think it's a cool project. I don't want to be too much of a hindrance here unless we really are going to go to the mat on this thing. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, motions? Okay, that's Robeson. Yost is a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Approved.
I don't think it has that much less glass than Dennis's.
Okay, we have no item 7. Item 8, communications, administrative approvals. Michael?
Just have a usual assortment of some minor projects. There's a couple to sign, and there's a revision to a previously approved administrative item, which is item 3. Item 1 is renovation of a cottage district house. Basically involves redoing the front porch and the rear porch and balcony and adding a carport. And then there's a building up in Asian District that involves some windows being added and changes in mullions and a new entry being provided on the south elevation. And then over in Plaza District, we have a little business, a pizza place with a different name, so a new sign and a couple new windows. So that completes our presentation.
Could I ask a quick question about that A number 1, the
Sure.
one that Ken Fitzsimmons did? And I think it's a great project. I just had a question about the carport, because I know that on that same block across the street, we had an issue with a carport that we had to approve, and maybe that was an accessory building that was an attached carport. Is that the issue, or what? How exactly are carports viewed in the cottage?
Well, the guidelines in Cottage, in downtown per se, are silent on it. There is a provision that does discuss forward-facing garages that face the street, and it encourages that access to garages in the cottage be taken off the alley where the alleys are accessible. Mm-hmm. But this is a carport. It's not an enclosed structure. It is attached to the side of the house, so we didn't feel there was anything in the guidelines that it was violating.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand it from my own point of view, because when I look in the code, it looks like carports as an accessory building in use are not allowed for DTD1. Mm-hmm. But then the code goes on to say, however, for those areas that are residential in nature, then it describes attached carports
Right.
as being kind of okay. And I didn't know, does that mean attached, yes, accessory building, no, regarding carport? I was just trying to get some clarity on that.
Well, yeah, this one was attached, so we didn't go much further than that, and we felt it was approvable. Because it wasn't detached, we didn't go into that part of the code that talked about that, so.
Okay.
I did have a question on that, because we've been really, really, really strong on no garages from the street. And there is an approach to the carport, but we're allowing them to extend the driveway from the street. And I think that's a consistency issue for us. And Michael wasn't here when we were really, working through that, and it, it's very clear in the ordinance. So I don't know if that's something that we would like to address.
Just let me make sure everyone follows it. So the code right now is you cannot drive off the street into your garage. However, with this case, you can drive off the street into your carport directly off of the street.
Well, and to be clear, it's, the requirements in the code on the garages are a guideline, so it's not a prohibition.
Okay.
And I think there's the extra thing, it's alley, having your car access off the alley, encourage, and then in previous precedents, or a detached garage, which is one of the very first things built off of 7th between Dewey and Lee long, long ago. And that resulted in a detached garage in the back. This particular site, just because I live across the street from it, is a challenge and I think is justifiable in not forcing alley access because it's literally would require an excavation of about 16 feet, dig a hole in the ground.
I think it would have been a good application to come before the committee because it is some kind of nuances, clarity that is not necessarily there, and at least we would be able to work through that and understand it better.
So I think that's, I'm sorry, Aubrey, you have to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention the nuances and clarity are not there because it's not within the code. That might be something that we could add to the survey of cottage district residents that Bill Blickley was going to put forward because this is an issue. I'm not sure if what the code's intention was to maintain the character of the districts by giving the alley access and the rear access precedence over doing more curb cuts along the street, or if it was a front-facing garage issue and that was not consistent with the character of the homes. So it could be multiple things. This might be something that was not on the survey that we could add to that to survey residents on whether or not they would like to see that as far as architecturally garages facing, or if it really is an access issue. Because the carport is the access issue, really. The front-facing garage is so much more dominant as far as the architectural component.
That was always, we initially treated that as a design and an appearance issue rather than an access issue, and we were discussing that 7 or 8 years ago.
Right. I would agree with that it was an appearance issue to avoid the suburban front-facing garage.
Right. And that's how we took it when we were reviewing this, because with the carport issue, it's less of the front-facing garage dominant architectural thing and more of an access thing. So if it's, this might be a workshop topic that we could talk about when the survey comes back in, because I think there'll be other things like the raised stoop for the access of residences in that district that come back saying that's not an issue with us either, that we could resolve in the code. And once the code really gives us some clarity, we can resolve some of these nuances, I think, with reviewing applications better. Because really all of these are administratively approvable because of the size. So we've been taking new construction to the committee to look at, but we have the ability to look at all of these projects without taking them to the committee and handle the nuances ourselves. So
Right. Well, and I mean, to that point, you pretty much have the ability, given the square footage, to make every decision that we make.
for these smaller structures, the cottage district is pretty much an
Right.
administratively
It's what is
approvable
like
district.
20,000 or something?
Yeah, the threshold's pretty big for the downtown design review. So that's another issue, too, that we might want to talk about. If we are going to retain the district inside the DTD1, would this be an area that we want to have design review committee input over these small structures? That would need to be...
Can you put that on the survey as well?
I think it is. I'll take
Okay.
a look at that. And I don't think he's issued it yet, but it's really close, so we'll catch him today.
I would say, I would suggest, given Bessie's comment and David's highlighting of the history of all this, that if there are any future cases where someone is parking a vehicle, pulling it off the street and parking it in a garage or a carport, that we bring it in front of the group just so we can vet it and talk about it.
Well, and another case that we talked about where we really didn't want cars in front of the structure was the house that wanted a courtyard.
Right.
in the front of the house, and we were very, very, very strong about that.
Right. So your point, your reply to Aubrey would be, it's not just the architectural element of a garage, it's the notion of automobiles in front of residential
On the
structures.
yard or...
Yeah.
In that particular case, the applicant was wanting literally a parking lot in front of the house. So
Well, but we all know what, or we've all seen front-facing garages and what happens when people fill up those garages and then all of a sudden their cars are backed up in a single, and then all of a sudden you can't walk on the sidewalk because there's a car parked across it.
And I think that there's a city ordinance about blocking access, so, and not that it keeps it from happening, but that...
Our enforcement would get there right at the moment.
there's also, at least in downtown, an ordinance that you're not allowed to have a parking lot in front of your building.
Yeah, I think that for the residential, though, it probably not qualify as a parking lot in that case.
He was proposing as 8-car parking lot.
And the other issue is that all these projects are not going to be, Ken Fitzsimmons or someone of equal caliber. We don't know kind of what we're going to get in the future, so I would like to, be nice to talk about it. Okay, did anyone else have any questions about the administrative approvals? Comments from the planning department?
Well, and then this just segues beautifully, because I was going to update you all on the status of the survey that Bill was putting together for Cottage District residents. And I'm thinking back to some of those questions, did ask people about the capacity of review, whether or not it should be administrative, done by the committee, not receive review at all. There's a lot of options in that survey. What I would recommend that we do is catch Bill as quickly as we can after this meeting to add the question in there about the garage. And what we might pose as far as the question is, do residents perceive there to be a preference or an issue with access and the architectural component, and ask a carport question as well? And I think it would be fair, too, if we could ask him to hold off on the survey until we can circulate that to this group to review. Does that sound like a good
So is that Bill
approach?
Bleakley is doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill had put together a list of questions that came out of a lot of our discussions with the workshop and other things we'd like to know. People perceive there to be too many regulations or not enough regulations, whether or not Cottage District should have its own set of standards. So he did that. He sent it to us. We added some questions to it, made some citations back to the code, and packaged it up. So I think it's 95%, and we'll try to catch it quickly and see if we can route it to you all for review. And then Bill's happy to disseminate that and collect the responses.
Can I ask one more question about this kind of has raised questions that I didn't even think about when I was looking at the project, but so we have it's like a 10-foot wide drive going in to this carport, which will handle one car, right? So,
Yes.
in our car-oriented society in Oklahoma City, where are the other cars going to park?
Well, the carport that was approved is not flush with the front of the house. It's set back
Right.
at least 20 feet back. So I would say from the street edge of the carport to the sidewalk, there's probably room for at least one, if not maybe two more cars, so.
Understood, just to raise that question. Because I live in a neighborhood that has 10-foot driveways, and so we end up with cars all over the place, literally, and no sidewalks. They're fortunate to have sidewalks in the cottage.
The other thing is that when we first started looking at this project, they were initially looking at a garage off the alley, but they raised the same issue that Commissioner Fitzsimmons did about bringing groceries home in your garage and having to walk up steps to get to the level where your kitchen is. and those kinds of things. And I don't think they're done with that, so they may end up coming back to us with, final, plans for a much larger project. But at this point in time, they decided to back off that larger project and just come in with this, so.
Understood.
Any other comments? Did you want to welcome Matt, or shall we welcome Matt? Or?
Welcome, Matt. Hi. Haven't had a chance to meet Matt yet. Our staff tries to catch new commissioners and commission members to do an orientation. So Michael and Paula, I think, met with Matt and gave him his packet. And we shared with him what we could, but I think the real learning experience is coming on board and participating in these meetings and learning of all of this stuff. But our staff is here for you, and we have our legal support too. So if you need anything from us, let us know. And just from the planning department, welcome, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you. Yeah. Nice to have you. Comments from the commission. I know that Jeff has a very interesting comment he'd like to make.
Well, I was just wanting to give everybody's kind of temperature on storage containers. I know Downtown Design was in favor of doing, for commercial use, storage containers. And I see places like in the Plaza District where that might be a good place for, small businesses. And also we had a discussion with cell cone stands that didn't comply, or maybe issues with food trucks. And so I was just wanting to put that out there as that might be something to think about, but just to see what everybody's thoughts were on storage containers for commercial use, or even maybe a temporary commercial use in some areas. Anybody have any thoughts, or good or bad, or?
You need your mic. Yeah. And it used to be turned on as well. But you've used those, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm not as guilty as the next guy, but it's the hot topic right now, and how many and how far do you go with it? So I don't know.
Fair enough. What happened on the DDRC with those the containers?
It's in a PUD, so we didn't actually hear it. It was presented to us, and it was interesting that we got a lot of comments from the commission, because Stan Carroll has actually done some work with those and discovered that they're actually very expensive to alter. And so adding windows and sliding doors and stuff like that can be very, very pricey. And then, so if anyone thinks that they're getting into an inexpensive project, that's probably not true. And then Dick Tannenbaum expressed distaste, or he says he's seen it done in other cities, and he feels like it's not a good precedent. But so I think that's really interesting, because I thought it was a cool idea.
That's where we're just suddenly seeing an influx of them. We have the 9th Street one.
Right.
And then I guess, did Downtown review the red one?
That was the one that was the PUD.
That's the PUD. And then, I'm doing a project that all the containers are actually inside, they're not on the street.
We did approve one that is a temporary location for a dog park.
That's right.
Oh, right, with Larry.
And it's an altered container that is, as the owner of the property finds use for the land, the dog park would move, and it would provide a dog park for Midtown, which is, I think that's a great idea. So.
A lot of those containers come from a lot of different places, and they're full of toxic coatings and things on the inside. And that's another issue, that people buy these containers, and they have to pretty much get rid of all that or encase it. And a lot of people aren't aware of it, but that'd be another thing to think about. If we're going to start using containers for buildings, we might want to have some sort of identification and and some regulation of what sorts of containers or what you do to a container to make it habitable.
As far as what the code would require or allow right now, since urban design is an overlay, it's going to allow buildings as long as they meet heights, setbacks, and materials, but the urban design overlay doesn't allow metal buildings. So downtown does. Downtown has steel as one of the materials that is an allowed material. So I'm not sure that in the urban design overlay district you would consider the storage building not a metal building when that material is prohibited.
Well, and also the height is never going to meet unless you stack them like the red ones did.
Right. So they would have to meet those basic standards to even be approvable according to the regulations of the code right now. So there are some nuances, since urban design has the NC district, which has different standards from the overlay, which has different standards from the downtown, which regulates the cottage district. So I think if you look at all of those things, you may or may not be able to approve just a single metal storage container.
So within the plaza district specifically, that would probably be prohibited as it's written.
If you consider that metal siding.
So you're saying without a variance to that?
Right.
It'd have to be right.
Have people been in Perched? Betsy, I'm sure you've been in Perched, on the 9th Street, on the container. Is there plumbing there? Is it just literally is it just a box that's finished on the inside?
It's just a box. I went to a discussion group on pop-up stores, and we talked about the containers and even tents and stuff like that. The containers in a grouping would probably require some kind of permanent plumbing, which the PUD item did have. I think it was a shared bathroom. Do you remember? So they provided a toilet facility and accessibility. I don't know how they provided accessibilities to the upper units, but anyway, so that is an issue, but Perch doesn't have a toilet.
Okay.
Is that approved, Perch, or not?
Has it been approved?
I don't know. I will ask.
I don't think so.
It might have gotten an administrative approval because of the size.
Uh-huh.
We'll check on that.
Yeah.
But it would have also required a variance on the height. So
You would have had to have made a recommendation on any variance, so
I
I
think it's
have
been-
a feeling it might not have gone through the process.
Interesting. All that said, I like the idea of a container being used like with Larry Pickering's dog park thing, or like Jeff was talking about, maybe if it's a vacant parcel, you're not quite sure what to put on it, and so you put a container like with a Perch-like store or something. In any event, I think it's definitely worth thinking about and talking about, which we started here. We'll see how many come through.
I was thinking that we probably, I would like for our design review committees to go through a more regular workshop series, maybe every other year, get together and do a workshop to see how the code can be improved or a process can be improved. We just did one, but I think it was a real focused one on the cottage district. So if you all would like for us to set something like that up, we could get a list of things started to talk about. And start to look at dates that we could schedule those, and maybe at the first of the year when things are a little bit slower with design review, try to schedule like every other January getting together and doing kind of a workshop format to talk about those things. Does that sound like something you'd like us to pursue?
Sure, yes. Great, thank you. Are there any more comments from the commission? The next meeting date is here on your agenda, September 25th. If there are no other issues, we will consider ourselves adjourned by unanimous consent. Thank you.